A man sitting majestically on a throne warns someone to prepare to leave for Irugo. The first princess of Sylvanus, Aristina looks at his majesty emotionlessly, without uttering a word. At this time, the king's subjects are whispering to the side that the princess needs to marry the barbarian. People argue that such an act of the ruler is too cruel, since his blood flows in Aristina. The man says that this event is happiness for him, since the noble blood of his useless daughter can be used at least so profitably. The girl looks at the floor, realizing that now she will have to go to the hostile state of Irugo to enter into a political marriage. The heroine unquestioningly followed her father's words and set off on her journey a month later. Once in the carriage, Aristina shows her middle finger out the window and tells everyone to disappear from this world. A joyful smile appears on the princess's face, and she looks happily at the sky. Having driven away a little from the palace, the fair-haired girl exhales with relief because she has finally gotten rid of her hated homeland. The heroine's father is a king who loved to bully his daughter in every possible way in order to make her a winner. One day, when Aristina was 6 years old, she woke up and saw that her entire room was on fire. If the girl had hesitated then and could not get out, she would have died. That day, the king looked with distraught eyes at the princess, who looked like a piece of coal. The man who locked all the windows and lit the fire was the father of the main character. When she realized who had put her life in danger, the girl stopped caring about the burns. She only felt pain coming from her heart. After this incident, Aristina was separated from her younger sister. The heroine spent 10 years in captivity, and this time was enough for her heart to burn to the ground. The princess touches her head, thinking that during this period she was able to see her past life. The heroine looks out the window, worried about leaving her younger sister Ronelle alone in this place. Aristina pushes these thoughts away from herself, realizing that now she needs to think about her future. The girl begins to remember what she knows about the state of Irugo. Irugo is a barbarian land that is surrounded by demons and a place ruled by fire and iron. Barbarians are not people or demons, but creatures united together. Aristina remembers her father's words that she would sleep in the same bed with a person associated with a demon. The princess understands that her father was unhappy, that they managed to avoid war with a state that was enemy to them. For a long time, everyone believed that Sylvanus was a conquering country, but the territory of Irugo was not conquered, so the king decided to capture it. However, this battle led to the defeat of the conquering country, and the reason for the loss was the future husband of the main character, Tarquin. Sylvanus proposed a truce, believing that further military action would only bring losses. Irugo knew that the war would be a burden for the country, so they proposed a marriage of convenience, which meant an alliance between states. However, the truce was concluded only to gain time, since the king did not think about ending the war. His Majesty planned to deprive his opponents of the determination to win, and then start the war again and occupy the territory. If the princess dies, then her death will fall on Irugo's shoulders. And then, declaring war in the country, having entered into a marriage alliance, will become a moral duty. The main character smiles at these thoughts, thinking about how surprised the king will be if the one he wants to kill gives him a huge surprise. In order for the girl's plan to work, she needs to establish cooperation with just one person, her husband. Aristina stands in front of a set table on which there are various sweets and different types of tea. The princess notices that all the people behind her are carefully looking at her while grinning. From the moment the blonde was sent on a journey by carriage, and not through a portal, she began to suspect that something fishy was going on. The girl touches her hand, which has become numb after 10 days of continuous stay in the carriage. The blonde recalls the tactless behavior of the knights who knocked on her window when she was changing out of an uncomfortable dress. For an unknown reason, the princess was asked to unexpectedly leave the transport right now, and they even prepared desserts. One of the girls standing next to Aristina invites her to sit down at the table. The girl calmly sits down, realizing that it is not time yet, and she needs to be patient a little longer. The heroine looks at her reflection in the cup and sees that the water is beginning to become cloudy. One of the maids suddenly throws hot water on the princess, grinning victoriously as she does so. Aristina falls to the ground, and a severe burn appears on her left cheek. The girl in the purple dress apologizes to Her Highness with fake regret, then smiles, saying that it was an accident. People begin to discuss the heroine's wet body, pointing out that this look is suitable for the bride of a barbarian. Everything around begins to sparkle and shimmer with rainbow colors. The ripples and cloudiness disappear from the princess's cup of tea, and now only her calm expression is reflected in it. In the past, the king expected his daughter to have an ability called the King's Eye. This skill can enable its owner to see the past, present, and future. The main character realizes that the place and clothes match what she saw through the cup. What the fair-haired woman sees through the surface will definitely happen in the future. A girl in a purple dress enthusiastically approaches the princess with a tray on which stands a jug of hot water. At that moment, when the maid turns out to be very close to Aristina, the heroine sharply turns her gaze to her. Out of surprise, the girl begins to fall and the same jug flies at her. The maid begins to scream in pain as hot water intended for another maid splashed onto her face. Next to the girl, another lady screams, horrified by Lady Brody's current appearance. The princess only looks at what happened without nationalism, realizing that the future she saw with the help of the king's eyes has completely changed. A girl with red hair runs up to the heroine, asking her how this happened. The blonde girl looks at the redhead with her innocent eyes, not understanding why she is being asked this question. Aristina says she just got up from her seat. The princess asks not to speak, as if the water spilled was her mistake. The red-haired girl is embarrassed by the heroine's words, not understanding why this stupid person speaks so smoothly. The girl is about to leave, but Aristina stops her, saying that they might need her now as a nanny. At this point, Lady Brody only begins to cry harder because she will now have a scar on her face. The entourage is trying to reassure the victim, saying that upon arrival in Irugo, they will call a doctor. However, the maid only cries more because it takes 2 more weeks to arrive at her destination. Aristina looks at the girls carefully, thinking about the fact that they are bullying others, not allowing the thought that they themselves might get hurt. Thanks to this situation, the ladies will finally understand that they can end up in the same situation as their victims. Initially, the main character planned to calmly reach another state, but the scene seen with the help of the king's eye changed her decision. The princess cannot use her ability whenever she wants, so if she sat still, she would get hurt. The red-haired girl looks at the fair-haired one, thinking that after 10 years of imprisonment, she has become truly crazy. However, the girl is surprised that Aristina, without proper education, can behave so elegantly at the table. The redhead quickly comes to her senses, not understanding how she could allow such thoughts. The lady restlessly remembers His Majesty's order, realizing that he has not yet been able to carry it out. The princess's clothes fall to the ground, and they begin to trample on them and get the red-haired's feet dirty. The girl grins, saying that now the heroine will have to wear the clothes of the poor, since Her Highness's last clothes have become unusable. At this moment, Aristina quickly picks up her clothes from the ground and runs into her carriage. The red-haired girl looks in bewilderment at the fair-haired girl looking out of the window. The princess hastily closes the curtains, hiding in her transport and hiding from prying eyes. With this behavior, the king's daughter confuses the ladies watching everything that is happening. After that day, the maids became more hesitant in their bullying. The girls were just capricious and tried various methods to ruin the princess's clothes. Sitting in the carriage, Aristina chuckles at the maid's pathetic attempts to offend her. To herself, the blonde calls this level of bullying quite cute, since now there is no need to wear tight and uncomfortable dresses. However, the heroine realizes that even though this is a political marriage, she needs to prepare a new set of clothes. Of the dresses that remained in proper condition, only those that the fair-haired woman wore in captivity remained. Aristina sighs sadly because even the wedding dress that she really liked turned out to be ruined. Finally, the heroine arrives at the western gate of the Erugo state. The knights standing at the top of this gate discuss rumors that the people of Silvanus are vile and treacherous. A man with purple hair and a scar on his cheek happily says that the princess will faint when she sees them. The red-haired man interrupts the conversations of the comrades, warning that a delegation from another state has arrived at their gates. The knight of Silvanus, Anther, who accompanied Her Highness all the way, greets the envoys from Irugo. The men look at the arrivals in bewilderment, not understanding why the delegation simply did not use the portal. The Shining Knight arrogantly asks if these knights are Erugo warriors. The men look around at the maids worrying about their outfits and the carriages decorated with precious stones. The knights understand that there is no need to even imagine how magnificent the Princess of Silvanus will look. However, contrary to the men's expectations, a girl in dirty and trampled clothes gets out of the carriage. Irugo's warriors look in surprise at the small, dirty princess, comparing her to a dirty ball of cotton wool. The red-haired man tenses at the sight of his arriving guest, beginning to guess what the king is really up to. Before arriving in another state, the main character realized that His Majesty wanted to send her here in the most sloppy form. The king wanted the knights and luxurious gifts to demonstrate the strong fighting power of Silvanus, and the dirty princess to show the attitude of the state towards Irugo. The knights begin to get angry at the arrivals, asking the guests if they are hinting that marrying their master is humiliation. The blonde calmly accepts this reaction from the warriors, realizing that this was to be expected. However, Aristina decides not to be embarrassed by such treatment. Her Highness approaches the red-haired man, who turns out to be at least 2 heads taller than her. The heroine fixes her gaze on the man, thinking that her husband is standing in front of her right now. The girl made this conclusion because she had previously been informed that Tarkin would meet her at the entrance gate. Looking at how and what the man stands, Aristina understands that this man has the highest status in Irugo. The red-haired man bows to the princess and welcomes her to their lands. The fair-haired woman is pleasantly surprised by the man's courtesy and is glad that he is not embarrassed by his appearance. However, Her Highness is embarrassed by the fact that the red-haired man speaks to her too politely, as if he is below her in status. At this moment, the man introduces himself as Durant and says that he has been assigned to accompany the princess. Aristina's eyes widen in surprise, as she was sure that her husband was standing in front of her. The blonde woman begins to look around and asks where her future husband is now, to which she is told that he has gone hunting. The princess grins at this answer, realizing that her married life with Tarkin will not be very good. The heroine confidently asserts to the Erugo warriors that her heroine's future husband is very shy about her. Such words from the girl plunge the knights into great shock. Durant awkwardly says that his master had to leave because monsters appeared on the border. Aristina now understands that this was a forced trip and not a simple hunt. The fair-haired one clarifies with the red-haired one why he did not immediately tell the true reason. Durant tells the princess that he only answered the question asked by the heroine about where her husband is. Aristina realizes that the man did not intend to lie to her. Her Highness tells the warrior that even a half-truth can become a false answer that fools another. The blonde decides that at the first meeting, she needs to show her good-natured side. However, the heroine begins to realize that this place is different from the state of Sylvanus, and she no longer needs to bow to others. Aristina understands that there are people in front of her who are initially negative towards her and do not expect anything from her. That is why Her Highness decides not to live up to the expectations of others and asks Durant not to fool her in the future. The red-haired man looks carefully into the eyes of the main character, glowing like stars, which stand out on her dirty face. The warrior catches himself thinking that the blonde is completely different from his expectations. After a while, the maids are heard screaming, who are very indignant at the knight's request that the princess dress in Irugo's clothes. Aristina chuckles at the servants' reaction, since before they were not at all worried about her appearance. As a result, the knights took a step back to avoid a quarrel, since the king was not there. However, despite such a slovenly and unkempt appearance of the heroine, the Irugo warriors still remained polite towards the princess. One of the knights rides up to Durant on horseback and asks why he so easily abandoned this behavior of the people from Sylvanus. Red Hair replies that it is because the prince wants to see the war end completely, so they should not stir up controversy to spread rumors. The knights begin to discuss the main character, saying that they liked her for her unexpected answers. Durant tells the warriors not to be too kind to the girl, as the Sylvans could send an assassin to them. The red-haired man's eyes widen in surprise when he sees the huge number of carriages standing in front of the palace. The warrior does not understand why all the royals are here now and shirking their duties. One of the girls with a high ponytail reports that Sylvanus' delegation has arrived. A fair-haired woman gets out of the carriage, and the eyes of all the people gathered in front of the palace immediately turn to her. Aristina compares the inquisitive gazes with spears and arrows flying at her. The red-haired girl grins and asks the princess if she thought things would change if she reached Irugo. The maids discuss that this was an expected reception, and finally, Her Highness realizes her place. Durant looks intently at the girls, not understanding why they don't protect Aristina, but rather humiliate her. Behind the back of Sylvanus' knight, Antera, a silhouette appears, heading towards him. The stranger passes by the Sylvanian and snatches a fabric made of expensive silk from his hands. The man shouts at the intruder that this is a precious material that cannot be exchanged, even for a chest of gold. Not listening to the knight's complaint, the stranger throws a cloth over the blonde, covering her from prying eyes. The princess is picked up, but out of surprise, she begins to try to get out of the grip, which she completely fails to do. Attempts to get down stop when Aristina hears a man's loud voice saying that all valuables should be given to his bride. Her Highness looks fascinated at the sparkling eyes of her future husband, like the rays of the sun. The girl studies Tarquin's face, thinking that all the inhabitants of Irugo are very tall. The heroine also notices that although the man did not say a word, the proud Sylvans did not utter a word. Tarquin directs his predatory gaze at the people gathered near his palace. The girl turns away in fear from his gaze, and the guy tries to start a conversation, but does not have the strength to say anything coherent because of fear. The black-haired man does not stay at the entrance for long and carries the bride up the steps with his bride in his arms. The prince carefully places the blonde, still wrapped in cloth, on the seat. Thakran warns the princess not to be mistaken, as he helped her because he didn't like his siblings talking about her. The man especially emphasizes in his speech that he did this not because of the beauty of his bride. Aristina understands the groom's words, since she would be more surprised if he liked him in her current image. Tarquin turns to the maids, asking them to help Her Highness take a bath. The blonde girl glances over the man's clothes, noticing that they are stained with the blood of monsters. The princess reminds her future husband that they are not yet married. Prince Irugo and the maid tremble at the heroine's words. The king's daughter looks at this reaction from the groom in disbelief because she just wanted to decide who would go first to take a bath. Takar Khan calms the blonde one down, saying that he is going to eat such a dirty girl even after washing. Aristina asks the black-haired man what he just meant, while he himself thinks that these words could have hurt the bride. The prince stops himself, realizing that princesses who grew up in beautiful castles are not treated this way. The blonde interrupts the man's thoughts, calling him a pervert. Taekurkin, with irritation in his voice, asks why the princess called him that, to which she replies that for such people it doesn't matter with whom, a ball of dust or a person. To these words, Prince Irugo reminds that when asked to wash, the heroine replied that they were not married yet. The bride's answer surprises the black-haired man, as she says that they cannot swim together because they are not married. The man sighs and tells the fair-haired woman that he will wash in another place. Aristina blushes, because during her captivity, she forgot the obvious fact that castles have several places for swimming. Her Highness approaches the maid, asking her to accompany her to the bath. Tarkin looks at the departing bride, thinking that she is a rather strange girl. Initially, when they first met, the man thought that Aristina was crying. Since the girl is related by blood ties to the aristocrats of Sylvanus, she grew up in a beautiful palace and was not used to such shameful situations. However, the heroine looked as if she had become emotionless, as she was no longer able to be proud. Prince Irugo crosses his arms over his chest, not understanding why his bride looks so dirty and unkempt. The princess looks with admiration at the filled bath with hot water. In her heart, Aristina hoped that the water would not be too cold, but she clearly did not expect such a reception. The three maids respectfully greet Her Highness, saying that they will help her with her bath. The blonde girl looks at them in surprise, since she has not been looked after like this since early childhood. Before this, the heroine had only met maids who constantly ignored her, so such respectful behavior is outlandish for her. While the girls wash Aristina's hair, she sets herself the task of making sure to win her husband over to her side. The bathing procedures suddenly stop as the maids freeze in place. The princess turns her head at the girls, asking what's the matter. One of the girls looks fascinated at Her Highness's mystical violet eyes and sparkling silver hair. Having come to their senses, the maids bow to the heroine, apologizing for the suspension of bathing procedures. Finally, Aristina plunges into the hot water, enjoying the temperature of the water and the scent of roses. The maids helped the princess rinse her hair a few more times, and then the girl sent them away to finally rest. After a while, the water in the bath begins to change its color, becoming like a starry sky. Aristina sighs, realizing that it is in such a situation that the vision should appear. The splashing of water is heard, a sign of the activation of the king's eye. Tarkin appears in the water, still wearing blood-stained clothes. The girl begins to pray that this is the near past, since she absolutely does not want to have a husband with a penchant for dirty clothes. Behind the man, someone calls him, and he turns his gaze there. Tarkin greets the girl who came up to him, calling her Diona. A girl with dark blue hair asks the black-haired man what made him fall into deep thoughts when he didn't even notice her approach. The man looks away, answering that he was not thinking about anything. Diona puts her hand on the prince's hand, asking whether he liked the princess from Sylvanus. Aristina looks at this scene in surprise, as she did not expect that the conversation would turn to her. Her Highness wonders how a man usually behaves when he is asked such questions. Tarkin is surprised by Diona's question, not understanding how she could admit the idea that he might like that princess. The black-haired man says that the girl herself knows very well that his heart is unchanging. Coming out of the bath, Aristina thinks about that girl with blue hair. The heroine decides that if Diona turns out to be Tarkan's lover, then this could play into her hands. The maid asks the princess to follow her so that she can show where her room is. But the blonde one says to take her to her future husband. Although the main character wants to rest, now she has a chance to get rid of the probing glances. At the same time, servants and soldiers who arrived from Sylvanas inspect the interior decorations, marveling at the beauty of the barbarian palace. In Prince Dion's office, he pours tea into a cup, glad that Tarkan has remained the same. The girl was surprised when the man unexpectedly stood up for the princess, but he is still the same, elegant and dangerous. A maid enters the room, announcing that Princess Sylvanas has arrived to see His Highness. Tarkan sighs and gives permission for Aristina to come to him. The door opens, and a girl of unprecedented beauty with silver hair enters the office. The prince asks in surprise whether the princess is standing in front of him right now. The blonde nods modestly, not understanding why everyone, including her fiancé, reacts to her this way. Her Highness sits down on the sofa, thinking that most likely everyone is comparing her to that lump of dust. Aristina meets the slightly blushing Diona's gaze. The princess reaches for the jug to pour herself a cup of tea. Seeing this movement, Diona takes off and apologizes to the heroine, fearing that she will think that she is being ignored. The girl with blue hair greets Her Highness and introduces herself to her by name. At this moment, Diona remembers how glad she was that it was not the second princess, famous for her beauty, who was coming to them. But now there was no reason left for joy. Tarkan turns to the blue-haired one, saying that she can be free. The girl purses her lips, and her body begins to tremble with anger. Despite this, Dion bows respectfully to the princess before leaving. The prince sits down on the sofa, opposite the main character, and asks the reason why she came to him. Her Highness says that she came to him because they will soon become a married couple and wants to spend some time with him. Aristina indignantly says to herself that it was not she herself who volunteered to marry a man. The next moment, the girl's eyes open wide, and a blush appears on her face. The heroine looks at the tea, rejoicing that it is the most delicious and high-quality tea she has ever drunk. Although the fair-haired woman did not come here of her own free will, she did not think that she would have such a good time. Aristina puts the cup on the saucer and begins the conversation, saying that she did not come to have a nice chat with Tarkan. The princess closes her eyes, as if deciding on something. Then the heroine sharply opens her eyes and in a confident voice invites the groom to start doing business together. For the blonde, neither love nor power have much meaning. All the girl wants is to earn a lot of money and buy her freedom to go where no one can lock her up. Aristina is going to keep an eye on those visions that appear only on the water surface. And for this, she needs money. At the princess's proposal, Tarkan makes a face. The heroine reassures the man, saying that she does not have the disease of an entrepreneur, in which there is a desire to get a lot of money by taking risks. The prince becomes even more irritated when the girl says that she is not asking for a loan or investment, and she cannot guarantee the success of the business. Seeing the man's expression, Aristina asks him not to look at her that way. Since the blonde has only spoken to people a few times, she decides to explain her idea in more detail. The princess says that the arranged marriage politically entwined her and Tarkan together, so they must form a victorious alliance. The prince smiles at the heroine's words, since no one has said anything like that to him before. The black-haired man asks Her Highness what she can offer him if he helps her. After these words, the blonde suddenly addresses the prince by name, thereby striking him. Aristina crosses her fingers, answering with a question what Tarkan himself would like to get from her. The princess smiles sweetly, thinking that she already knows what a man wants, thanks to the king's eye. The prince turns his head away and answers the heroine that he does not know what a girl can give him, who allegedly cannot hold a fork in her thin hands. Her Highness looks at her palms, saying that they are ordinary hands of a Sylvan girl. Realizing that Tarkan does not trust her at all, Aristina rises from her seat, saying that they need to sit down at the negotiating table. Approaching the door, the fair-haired woman says that before signing, you need to check the goods. Within the walls of the palace, the servants decide to discuss the bride of Prince Irugo, saying that a princess who looks like a beggar cannot suit their master. The girl tells the others that although everyone was told that Aristina was just sick, in fact, she has a mental illness. Blonde was kept in isolation for 10 years, precisely because her consciousness, cognition, constantly leaves her and then returns. The maid is horrified by such news, since their master has to marry such a man. The man clarifies that if His Highness Tarkan becomes the heir, then Aristina will become the wife of the crown prince. The maid agrees with the servant's words, saying that with such an outcome, Arugo's authority will be undermined. The girl says that although Tarkan is the king's favorite, Prince Kamir will be the best heir. The man interrupts the maid, causing her to shut up and turn around. His Highness Tarkan passes by a servant heading somewhere. The girl decides to better watch her words, since now the prince is often in the palace due to the end of the war. Although the girls are not used to seeing a man so often, they are happy every time they look at the magnificent appearance of the black-haired man. As the maid thinks about how beautiful the man's sparkling hair is, they notice someone walking next to him. This stranger turns out to be the main character, who is trying to keep up with Tarkan's walking. The girls look at each other in shock, not believing that the girl in rags is standing next to His Highness. The servants decide to quickly go to the queen's palace, simultaneously discussing what they saw. King Irugo, lord of the blood and iron monster plains, Nefter, is informed that the princess wishes to meet him. The official meeting with the Sylvanas delegation will not take place until tomorrow, so the man does not understand why the girl decided to meet now. The second princess of the Irugo state, Yarenika, offers to agree to the meeting, since in the future Aristina will become a member of their family. The king smiles at his daughter's obvious plans, knowing that the pink-haired one also went with the other princesses to see the bride. The man tells the servant that he has no government business right now, so the heroine can come to them. The pink-haired girl grins triumphantly, as she already imagines how she exposes Princess Sylvanas to ridicule in front of the king. Yarenika thinks about what her brother will say now, whether he will beg to change the wedding conditions. Princess Irugo smiles sweetly as she greets those who enter. The pink-haired girl believes that no one but her can be her father's favorite. Aristina enters the king's office and curtsies, thanking him that the ruler accepted her, such an unexpected request. The heroine did everything so elegantly and gracefully that Yarenik's body began to shake with anger. The oilman orders the servant to quickly bring tea and sweets to the guests. The girl sighs with relief, rejoicing that the greeting of the ruler of this country was successful. Previously, the blonde was taught manners using the king's eye. In the water spilled on the floor, Aristina watched how the etiquette lessons were going on. The princess sits down on the sofa, and the dessert she saw with her ability, Frin jelly, is placed in front of her. This dish is special because, unlike regular jelly, it is more elastic and has a sweet and sour taste. Her Highness looks at the dessert with fascination, wanting to try it as soon as possible. However, the blonde is stopped by the fact that she has not yet proven her worth. Tarkan, sitting next to him, looks blankly at the gradually changing mood of the main character. As a result, Aristina decides to demonstrate her ability to sell for the sake of Tarkan. The prince still looks at the blonde in disbelief, hoping that she will not be completely confident in trying to sell something to his father. At the same moment, King Irugo looks at his son and bride, thinking that they quickly developed a relationship with each other. Nefter asks the princess why she came the day before the official audience. Her Highness says that she has a matter that she would like to discuss with the ruler, but she is not allowed to finish. The rest of the princes and princesses of Irugo enter the king's office, interrupting Aristina's private meeting. The third prince, Martin, chuckles and asks Tarkan if he is happy that the women of Sylvanas are famous for their beauty, like his bride. However, When the black-haired brother turns his gaze to Aristina, instead of that lump of dust, he sees a beautiful girl in front of him. The fourth princess, Stalina, flinches in surprise, not understanding why the blonde one now looks completely different. Tarkin, looking at the change in emotions of his relatives, reflects that they are all close to the queen, and deliberately praised the heroine's appearance, not knowing about her true beauty. The man becomes very interested in what Her Highness will do when meeting with high-ranking officials of Irugo. The blonde tilts her head to the side, looking carefully at the people, and asks them who they are. Paella, the first princess, tells the worried Stalina not to show any doubt. The girl doesn't understand why the queens, when she sent them here, didn't tell them that the heroine had such an appearance. The first princess addresses Aristina, telling her to be more careful with what she says next time. Paella grins and warns the blonde that they are not servants sent here. The princess looks at each other, smiling and planning something. The girls begin to talk to each other about how their expectations were too high, since Aristina does not know the simple rules of etiquette. The prince notices that his sisters have suddenly changed their behavior after deliberately praising their opponent. The speech of royals is like the swords of knights, as it is filled with masks and acting. Tarkin has many enemies in the palace who cause inconvenience to his bride, which is why the man tells the heroine that it is better for her to remain silent. The blonde girl is angry at the groom's words, because she was going to at least demonstrate her abilities a little. Aristina tells the princesses that there was a misunderstanding between them. Paella grins at the girl's words, calling it stupid that she is going to explain herself to her. However, the fair-haired woman's facial expression changes dramatically. Aristina's gloomy gaze turns to the first princess. The main character says that she did not ask the royals who they were. Alisher was conducting a monologue with herself. The blonde one says that it seemed to her that they had already met Paella somewhere. The face of the first princess shows shock and not understanding how Aristina was able to remember her in that house. Now, the girl understands that the heroine's question about who she is was asked only because she still has her face in her memory. Next, Princess Sylvanusa addresses Prince Martin. The blonde girl asks him if they have met him before. The man good-naturedly replies that this is probably so, since he had previously visited her state. However, the heroine says that she has the feeling that they did not see each other in Sylvanus. Martin begins to laugh, asking Aristina if they had met in her dreams. Paella silently asks her brother to shut up, since she is sure that the fair-haired one remembered her at the entrance to the palace exactly then. Although other people said that in isolation the princess went crazy and did not learn anything. But this is completely not true, and she is amazingly smart. Aristina's life is a world that was accidentally reflected in the water, and it is impossible to live in it without the observations of a good memory. Paella notices that her father is really interested in the heroine. The girl is worried that the blonde will talk about what happened earlier, and then their visit will not be perceived as something funny. The first princess realizes that the situation is becoming dangerous, and it is time for them to leave. At this moment, Stalina shouts at the heroine that she is shamelessly and naturally communicating with another man, having a fiancé. Aristina turns her gaze to the fourth princess, beginning to recognize her face. Earlier, Stalina called Her Highness the one with low blood flowing in the room. The girl, noticing her gaze studying her, asks the princess what she is looking at. Aristina smiles at the fourth princess's gaze, which is filled with hostility and contempt, and thinks that she is thinking like a child. Stalina begins to get angry at this smile, asking the blonde if her words seemed funny. Paella yells at her sister to shut up immediately. The fair-haired girl apologizes to Her Highness, asking for understanding, since the fourth princess is still small. Aristina calmly drinks her tea, thinking that the first princess is more savvy. At the moment, the crown prince of Aerug has not yet been determined, so the battle between the Hamir and Tarkin factions is now underway. Unlike the first prince, the black-haired one was born from a commoner, which is his political weakness. However, a more problematic reason is the battle between old and new factions. Aristina asks the princesses if they doubt her belonging to the royal family. The blonde one asks if the girls are concerned about her origins. One of the queen's maids reports to her that the royal specials have gone to the main palace. The girl excitedly asks if everything will be fine, to which she receives a positive answer because this is an unofficial audience. The queen says that her dear Yerenika will do the job perfectly. In particular, the woman is confident in paella. Although she is the daughter of a concubine, she is more savvy than others. At the same time, the first Princess Irugo loudly justifies her sister's words as her immaturity. The third prince confirms the fair-haired woman's words, saying that Stalina cannot yet distinguish reality from fiction. The girl looks at the prince and princess with horror in her eyes, not understanding why they turned away from her. Earlier, when Stalina and Paella discussed marriage with the Salvans, her sister was on her side. The fourth princess does not understand how everything could turn against her. Tarkin is surprised at how cleanly Aristina's work was done. If the Sylvans find out what happened today, before the official audience, they will not miss their chance to accuse him of insulting the royal family. A peace agreement in which Irugo becomes the winner has not yet been concluded. So at the moment, the barbarian state is walking on thin ice. Trade agreements, rites of passage, rights of use, all of these can be used as an excuse for the Sylvans to gain greater benefits. And in this case, all the problems that arise will fall on the shoulders of the queen, which is why those two are trying to smooth everything out. The only problem is which side Nefter, the king of Irugo, took. Initially, when Aristina came to another state, she did not intend to pay attention to rude actions and just wanted people to be quieter. The fair-haired girl notices that for a long time, the ruler of the plains and monsters has not taken his eyes off her. The heroine thinks that everything did not go as she planned, but she managed to get Nefter's attention. The princess reflects that this will become a problem for her if she begins to reproach the ruler's daughters, and also contempt for the king will not play into her hands. Aristina smiles at Nefter, showing that he should not be afraid of her. The fair-haired girl shudders when she sees such an expression on her highness's face. The girl imagines the fair-haired girl complaining to the ruler about how coldly and humiliatingly she was received. Aristina, in Paella's thoughts, says that she was called a hillbilly and insulted because of her heritage. The first princess begins to worry that her father will call all those responsible to justice if he finds out about what happened. The girl is already beginning to think about whether she should take the blame on herself, but quickly comes to her senses. Freeing herself from Aristina's spell, Paella tells Stalina to apologize to the blonde now. The fair-haired girl now understands that she and her sister were too susceptible to rumors and their own inattention. Stalina begins to shake with anger and apologizes to Aristina in an irritated tone. The heroine asks the fourth princess if she wants to tell her anything else. Paella glares at her sister as her face shows no remorse at all. The blonde remembers Stalina's words when she called her lowborn. The fair-haired woman repeats to Princess Irugo that she must make a worthy apology for Aristina. Seeing that Stalina is frozen in place, Paella asks her to explain herself if she does not want to admit her mistake. The girl kneels down and bows her head, offering her sincere apologies to the heroine. Tekrikhan turns to the blonde, interested in how the girl reacted to such an apology from his sister. Instead of the expected reaction in the form of pleasure, the man sees joy and pride on Aristina's face looking at him. The black-haired man is very surprised by this, since he previously imagined the Sylvans as gentle and vulnerable. Tarkin smiles, thinking that the girl looks like the one who installed the princess of the country with just a couple of words. Aristina notices that the prince liked what happened to his sister, and now she realizes that there are many disagreements between them. However, the situation does not end there, since the heroine decides to understand it to the end. Blonde approaches the fourth princess, saying that she didn't expect things to turn out this way. Stelina raises her head, looking at the heroine, and remembers that she has never insulted her or asked for an apology. Aristina extends her hand to the girl and says that she simply asked if the princess wanted to tell her anything else. The heroine says that she is uncomfortable looking at how the princess is on her knees and asks her to get up quickly. Stelina looks at the girl with despair in her eyes, feeling her absolute superiority in everything. The only thought that freezes in the girl's head is that the blonde girl looks like her father. The king smiles at Aristina's intelligence, since she knows how to skillfully use her position. The heroine's actions were bold and no less prudent, within the bounds of decency. Ruler Erugo tells the suddenly arrived guests to stop making a mess and asks them to sit down. The prince and princess look at each other, realizing that they acted too recklessly. Suddenly, Yerenika gets up from her seat, saying that her father is right, and they behaved so rudely on such a joyful day. Paella looks at her sister with hostility because she duplicitously chose a position that was convenient for herself. The pink-haired girl continues, saying that she would be very sad if, after such an outburst, Aristina dislikes them. The main character carefully studies Yerenika, noticing that she has a fragile physique, fair skin, and her eyes are the same as the king's, turquoise. The girl is the queen's daughter, which means she is Hamira's younger sister and Irugo's second princess. The pink-haired girl approaches Aristina and asks to call her Tina. After this request, a snake-like smile spreads across the girl's face. Hearing her abbreviated name, the fair-haired woman is struck by the thought of having one child. In early childhood, the heroine was on good terms with a girl with hair the color of the sun. From warm memories, Aristina, without hesitation, happily agrees to Yerenika's request. The second princess smiles widely, glad that the blonde allowed her to call her by her shortened name. The heroine explains to the pink-haired girl that she looks like her younger sister, who is very beautiful and sweet. Previously, when the second princess of Silvanus was a baby, Aristina always watched her. For the blonde one, her sister remained cute, even when the heroine was imprisoned because of her. The girls sit and talk good-naturedly, and the pink-haired one is happy that she successfully managed to squeeze between the heroes. Yerenika reflects on how sweet and beautiful she is because she protected Aristina from her evil relatives. The princess turns to the heroine, saying to contact her if something does not suit her in the palace. A funny thought flashes through the blonde's thoughts. If the pink-haired one is ready to help with everything, then she can do it with her marital duty. The girl smiles sweetly and thanks Yerenik, discarding formalities. The princess then covers her mouth, apologizing for it, and asks if she can address the royal person informally. The queen's daughter awkwardly replies that this request embarrasses her, and in her heart she is angry at Aristina's words. The blonde says that she misunderstood the girl, thinking that they might not adhere to etiquette since they became close. Sylvanka says she doesn't understand these formalities very well, so she thought they became sisters. Yerenika waves her hand and smiles awkwardly, saying that the heroine is right. The heroine happily asks the girl if she then agrees to an informal way of communication. The pink-haired girl begins to be very annoyed that the princess does not understand even the slightest hint, as if all her life she had only communicated with walls. Aristina tells Yereniki that her sister always treated her with respect and even spoke formally at a very young age. After these words, Martin cannot stand it and begins to laugh at the pink-haired girl. Yerenika turns to him and menacingly asks what amused him so much. After a small quarrel with her brother, the second princess turns back to Aristina, noticing that she is looking somewhere purposefully. The girl follows the blonde's gaze and notices that she is not taking her eyes off Frinfren. Yerenika realizes that the heroine does not know that if they bring this jelly to her father, He always gives it to her. The pink-haired girl makes a cute expression on her face and says in the same voice that she loves this dish very much. The second princess says that the king can give her his portion as usual. However, after these words, silence falls in the hall, and all attention is focused on the jelly held out to the ruler. Aristina, instead of trying Frinfrin herself, decided to treat Nefter to it. The blonde girl looks at the lord of the monster plains with her innocent eyes, asking him to open his mouth. The man asks in surprise if the princess wants to feed him. The heroine turns to the king, calling him father, and answers his question positively. Yerenika hits the table, calling Tina crazy and asks her to watch her words. Tarkin tells his sister that after the wedding, the blonde will become their family, so it's a good idea to address the ruler right away like that. Black-haired says that it is strange to hear indignation about this from Yerenika. The girl hesitates because of her brother's words, since she had previously addressed the heroine as a family member. Aristina tells Nefter that if he doesn't like this, then she will correct herself. Instead of answering, the lord of the monster plains eats the jelly he holds out on his fork. All the servants freeze in surprise, not understanding what they just saw. The palace workers do not understand how the great king of metal and blood can do such a thing. After finishing Frinfranc, the man tells the blonde that she can address him as her father. From Nefter's words, a blush appears on the main character's face. The servants discuss that His Majesty ate a dessert that he had never touched before. Yerenika looks at Princess Sylvanas in shock, now confident that the girl knows her father's secret. Aristina enthusiastically continues to feed the King Frinfranc. His Majesty's children look in surprise, thinking about how much more Lord Irugo can handle. The blonde girl interestedly asks Nefter if he likes the dessert. The man sweats at the girl's question and thinks for a long time about the answer. Finally speaking, the king says that the dessert is very tasty. Such an answer from his father surprises Tarkin, and he asks with gestures what happened to his pride and greatness. Nefter just looks away and continues chewing the jelly. Aristina looks at Frinfran, thinking that he is quite difficult to pick up. However, the heroine had previously seen her younger sister do a similar act for their father. Using the king's eye, the blonde learned to lift clay with a fork. The little girl tried to earn the king's attention, but when she realized that he needed not his daughter, but her ability, she abandoned these attempts. Suddenly, a knock is heard from the side where Yerenika is sitting. A cup of tea, which apparently was unbalanced, accidentally slipped out of the girl's hands. The pink-haired girl yells at the servants, scolding them for bringing her an untested cup. Paella is surprised that the girl, who usually watches her appearance, raised her voice. Aristina gets distracted, and the jelly accidentally slips off her fork, landing in the saucer. Looking at the fallen Frenfran, the girl thinks that she definitely could not behave like that with her father. His Majesty has one secret that neither the servants nor even Tarkin know about. There was a reason why the pink-haired girl ate the king's jelly every time. The fact was that his right wrist was injured. Although this injury does not affect his life in any way, in wartime it can easily bring turmoil. An injury can cause concern among the people and undermine the morale of soldiers. And since slippery foods like jelly might raise suspicions, he preferred to avoid them. Only the attending physicians and Princess Yerenika know about this secret. One day, when a servant brought Frinfran to the king, he pushed him away from him, saying that he was giving the jelly to the second princess. After this, rumors spread that the princess was so sweet that she softened the serious king. People said that among the princesses, the ruler favored Yerenike the most. And this is precisely what can become reliable support for Prince Hamir and the Queen. This was the girl's plan, to strengthen her brother's position and make everyone call her her father's favorite. Aristina thinks that if the pink-haired one wants to protect Nefter's secret, then she should just let her feed him. The blonde looks at the groom and realizes that she was right. when she thought that for the ignorant Tarkin, her actions would look unreasonable. The heroine turns her gaze back, thinking that there is nothing sadder than not being able to eat her favorite dish. The princess is trying to figure out if the man is angry because he is being treated like a child. Although the girl is accustomed to formal communication, she does not know how the interlocutor might react in such a situation. Nefter finally breaks the silence and says that even though it was not he who initiated this marriage, he is happy with everything. The king asks what the heroine wants for entertaining him. Aristina's eyes widen in surprise as the ruler asked this question, addressing her by her nickname, Tina. For the first time in her life, the princess finally heard herself addressed by a diminutive name. The man notices the blonde's shock and asks her if this is too much for her. The girl touches her fingers embarrassedly, convincing herself that she shouldn't attach much importance to this. However, in her heart, she feels that the king has really become her father, so she tells him that she is very happy. Aristina smiles broadly and reminds her of Nefter's words about her desire, and says that he hit the mark. The servants are surprised by informal statements towards the ruler. The fair-haired girl thinks that although she fed the man because she saw it through her eye, she herself did not expect to dare to do such a thing. Nefter asks the main character what she wants, clarifying that it might be lands full of precious stones. Aristina looks at Tarkin, showing him that she is ready to reveal the true purpose of her visit. The heroine says in a confident tone that she wants to clear Erugo of the reputation of the country of barbarians. Everyone gathered in the king's office looks at the princess in shock, not believing what she just said. Blonde with her skills is exactly the kind of contract that deserves to be printed without reading its terms. After a while, the heroes walk through the territory of the palace, which has already been painted in sunset colors. Tarkin looks at Aristina, remembering how shocked everyone was by her statement. The man stops the girl, asking her to give him some of her time. However, the girl begins to walk forward again, saying that she is busy now. The black-haired man follows her and once again asks her to give him just a couple of minutes. The heroine turns to Tarkin, saying that since he asks so, she agrees. The heroes sit down at the table, and the prince says that Aristina can really be useful to him. The man mentions that the scene his brother and sisters enacted was quite a fascinating spectacle. The blonde girl is happy in her heart that everything is going as she planned. Tarkin carefully looks at the heroine's face, noticing that it looks too happy. The black-haired man confuses Aristina by saying that there is something else he wants to say. The excited girl asks the groom if he saw how good she is, and if he heard her request to the king. The man looks away and disinterestedly says that this is only beneficial for his father. The blonde smugly turns away from the hero, asking why he called her here, since she is so useless. To this, Tarkin replies that he knows that Aristina was crying. The girl looks at the groom in bewilderment, not remembering this situation. Black-haired explains that this happened when she arrived at the palace and was greeted by the royal offspring. The blonde spreads jam on her bread, while wondering why she could be crying then. Tarkin awkwardly says that since the heroine is the princess of Sylvanus, she is not used to such things. Aristina calmly replies that this is nothing new to her. The man changes his face, asking the bride what she means by this. The princess looks at the black-haired man, surprised at this change of mood. Suddenly, the girl realizes what her fiancé doesn't know about her. Tina asks Tarkin if he is aware that she was in captivity. The hero looks at the bride in surprise, not believing what he just heard. The blonde is amazed at how indifferent the man was to his own bride, because the whole royal family knows. Aristina remembers her first vision in this palace, when the prince did not like her, but perhaps it was not because of her sloppiness. The princess taps the table thoughtfully, thinking that she may have understood what her client is worried about. The heroine tells the groom that they will enter into a political marriage in any case, so they need to improve their relationship. Then the girl raises the knife up and directly asks His Highness if he wants the war to continue. The man asks in bewilderment what his fiancée is talking about. The blonde frowns, thinking that it is better for Tarkin to answer honestly. At the moment, Sylvanus is actively preparing for war, and among the princess's things brought from her homeland, there is a deadly poison to kill the black-haired one. At the same time, while the heroes are alone with each other, the rest of the Sylvans are given a tour of the palace. One of the girls tells the redhead that she was wrong about the man who was rumored to be a monster. Sylvanki begins to discuss the black-haired man's beauty, noting that he is not suitable for their princess. Lady Brody says that the prince will soon lose interest in the blonde, because he will see what a savage she is. The blonde dreamily says that she, as the closest servant to Her Highness, must take care of her husband. The ladies' conversations are interrupted by the Knight of Sylvanus. Running towards them, a man shouts to the whole area that the princess has gone to meet King Irugo. The knight says that their audience has already ended, and now the princess is talking with the barbarian alone. The redhead bares her teeth, irritated by Aristina's actions, because she still hasn't understood her place. Tarkin answers the fair-haired woman's question that, obviously, there are people who thirst for war. After this, the man raises his confident gaze to the girl and says that he is not one of those people. The heroine puts the knife back, saying that she understood him. The black-haired man asks the bride why she decided to ask him about this. Princess Sylvanusa tells him that the fact is that the easiest way to win the war is to kill her. Tarkin clenches his hand into a fist, saying that there are other methods to win the war. Aristina begins to list the options in which she can become a spy for Sylvanus, or lull the prince's vigilance and try to kill him. However, the girl does not understand why she should take such risks for the sake of those for whom she does not have good feelings. The man asks the fair-haired woman if she came here against her own free will. The princess says that Tarkin is right, and the fact of her imprisonment is easy to find out after little investigation. The black-haired man reflects that this topic is not something that is easy to talk about. If the king of Sylvanus did not want to see his daughter so much that he isolated her, then there is a high probability that the wedding was arranged for the sake of her death. The girl puts her palms together, saying that she doesn't want to die just like her fiancé doesn't want to start a war. The princess says that she can take over the work that he could not deal with during his absence. Tarkin lowers his head and asks Aristina if her only desire is to help him. The blonde smiles happily and says that she will do her best to keep him safe. The black-haired man realizes that all that long dialogue about the trade union was to save her life. The man thinks to himself that her safety is a given. Tarkin does not understand how the fair-haired woman was treated then, since she did not worry about who her marriage partner was. Previously, the prince was infuriated by the girl's constantly calm expression. The black-haired man clenches his fist even harder, trying to figure out why he is so angry at the Sylvans. While the man was deep in himself, Aristina thought carefree about whether she could finish the last cookie. As a result, the fair-haired one ate it and decided to drink it with hot tea to warm her throat, which was sore due to the unusual verbosity. The princess wonders if her constant smile, which she so diligently shows, looks strange. Before this, the heroine saw through the king's eye that to better convince her interlocutor, she needed to smile more. Looking at Tarkin, the girl wonders whether she did well in her first time conducting long conversations. If you look at the prince now, he looks more gentle, although he still has something of the pervert. Suddenly, Aristina begins to worry and thinks that this is the moment. The blonde woman addresses the groom as a partner, thereby surprising him. The princess extends her hand to the man, offering to help each other for the sake of common safety. A sweet smile stretches across the heroine's face to look as friendly and harmless as possible. Tarkin asks Aristina if she understands what this means. The girl begins to smile even brighter, asking the groom if he knows what a political marriage is. The black-haired man grins, saying that of course he knows what it is. The prince rises from his seat, and the heroes shake hands. The blonde one happily says that they will have a good partnership. The man asks if his fiancée wants anything other than this. The girl's eyes light up with excitement, and she says that she has a great idea for a business. The cockroach's gaze darkens when he hears the girl's words, as he expected a different reaction. After meeting with her groom, Aristina walks through the palace grounds, upset that Tarkin is not yet ready for her new plans. On her way, the girl meets the same knight who told the maids about her whereabouts. The man will angrily yell at the girl, accusing her of inappropriate behavior. The Sylvan is so angry because he received a reprimand from the maids and is now going to intimidate the princess so that she does not disappear again. Prince Irugo appears behind the girl, putting his arm around her shoulder. Not expecting such a turn of events, the knight begins to tremble and fear. Tarkin heads towards the man, forcing him to take a step back. The Sylvanian says that these are internal affairs of Sylvanus, and the prince should not pay attention to this. The knight, hoping for the princess's help, looks at her pleadingly. However, Aristina just shrugs, not understanding why she should do anything. The black-haired man says that, first of all, this matter concerns his fiancée. His Highness approaches the Sylvan, warning him that a dog that grins at its owner is useless. Without saying another word, Tarkin hits the man in the leg with a swing, sending him flying. The prince steps on the knight's head, and he begins to shout that he will file an official protest because of the hero's actions. The black-haired man reacts calmly to this, agreeing to the Sylvanian's words. Tarkin turns his gaze to Aristina, saying that he will act as the owner of this dog asks. His Highness looks at the blonde with interest, waiting to see what she will do. The knight shouts to the girl to quickly tell the prince to take his foot off him. The man does not understand why the heroine is in no hurry to pacify her fiancé, but only looks confused. The blonde remembers that the Sylvans always behave this way. Aristina remembers how the knights, thinking that no one could hear them, discussed her low intelligence and good looks on the road to Irugo, the same knight who now lies under the prince's feet, then confidently said that the princess would definitely be grateful if they gave their love. Once the heroine caught the knights peeping while she was changing clothes. Although the man apologized then, his next words were a regret that he had not opened the curtain earlier. Aristina doesn't understand how, after something like this, she has the courage to ask her for help. The blonde woman approaches her fiancé and places her hand on his. The girl says that husband and wife are one body and one thing. After these words, the heroine smiles ominously and asks Tarkin to step on the prince again. Both men are very surprised by the princess's answer. The prince then looks at Aristina mysteriously, saying that he will do as his bride wishes. The knight, without an orientation, turns his gaze first to Tarkin, then to the fair-haired one, asking him not to do this. The man raises his leg over the Sylvanian's body, and a loud scream is heard throughout the palace grounds. Having dealt with the knight, the black-haired man asks the servant to imprison him in prison. The heroine looks carefully at her palm, remembering how strong the groom's hand was. Then the princess thinks that since Tarkin is a warrior, it was easy for him to deal with the knight. The prince notices someone's gaze burning through his back and turns around. Seeing that it is Aristina, the black-haired man turns away embarrassedly. The girl thinks that when Tarkin beats others, he feels delighted, but she respects his tastes. The servant asks the man if he is okay, to which he replies that he feels some kind of ominous gaze. The blonde comes into her bedroom and looks around. The heroine notices that although she will only use this room before the wedding ceremony, it is perfectly clean. Aristina smiles because she feels truly welcome here. The princess thinks that even though others say that she came to Irugo to die, but she is really happy that she is leaving according to her convenience. Suddenly, The girl's thoughts are interrupted by someone's voice calling her. Lady Brody shouts at the heroine that she cannot hear her at all. The red-haired and blonde wait for the moment when all of Irugo's maids leave the chambers. After this happens, the doors leading to the bedroom close, and darkness falls in the room. Sylvanus' maids ask the princess threateningly if she wants to explain something to them. Aristina asks the redhead if she understands the barking of dogs. The girl replies that, of course not. The maid then chuckles, saying that Her Highness seems to have mastered the language of dogs due to her inability to communicate with humans. The blonde sighs and says that ladies can't even be at the level of dogs. The maids are amazed at the heroine's words, realizing what she just called them. The princess turns away from the girls, realizing that dogs are much nicer than them and have a sense of duty and trust. Aristina sits down on the sofa, saying that I heard barking, but it was too frequent that even a dog is not capable of such a thing. Ladies who come from the highest aristocratic families are called palace companions. Such girls are different from ordinary maids because they become interlocutors for royalty. However, the maids of the first princess of Sylvanus came from inconspicuous backgrounds. In other words, they are ordinary ladies. Entering the abandoned palace of the princess, such people usually just chuckle and little by little plunder the budget. The redhead yells at the heroine, asking what she just called them, and what the king would do if he learned about such behavior. The blonde agrees with all the words, wanting the ladies to leave quickly. The maid recalls that Aristina was always like this. No matter how much she was scolded, she was careless and could not understand anything. Even when the princess's clothes had holes and were worn down by dirty feet and rubble was added to her food, she was a stupid girl. The red-haired girl is angry with the heroine that because of her, she had to go to another state and become her nanny. The maid reminds the blonde of her duties. Aristina asks in bewilderment what duties are being discussed. The girl grins, saying that the role of a princess is death. The other maids look at each other, not understanding what their friend is talking about. The red-haired woman waits for the blonde-haired one, who is always batting her eyes, to nod her head. The princess says that the girl is mistaken, since they are now in Irugo and not in Sylvanus. The maids exclaim in shock that Aristina was proud only of this. The heroine says that girls really can't even be with dogs because they have no idea how they should behave in the future. Lady Brody and the blonde look at each other as they didn't expect to be interrupted. The blonde tilts her head to the side, wondering what she should do with the wild mongrels. The girls shout at the princess again, saying that they will report her behavior to His Majesty. The maids ask the heroine if she saw the reaction of the royal offspring, who immediately disliked her. Aristina is disappointed and calls her companions narrow-minded. The blonde girl studies the girls with her eyes, wondering if she should show them reality. Lady Brody asks Lady Rosalina to say something to the princess, since such behavior cannot be tolerated. The redhead recalls a rumor that Aristina's fiancé beat up a knight, after which the maid realizes that all these blinks of the eyes were turned into yawns in response, only covering the claws of Her Highness. The heroine, who used the mask of a crazy or stupid girl, was flawlessly deceiving everyone all this time. The princess tells her companions that dogs are very smart. If they are told to sit, they sit. Aristina turns to Lady Rosalind, asking her where she can find such an obedient dog. The maid looks at the blonde with irritation and fear, shaking with anger. Suddenly, the other companion's eyes widen in surprise. Lady Rosalina knelt before the princess and laid her head on her lap. The maid, flushed with embarrassment, realizes that all this time it was she who mocked the princess the most. If all this is revealed, then the red-haired woman will not escape responsibility because she has no connections in Irugo. The girls' mouths drop open when they hear their friends start barking next to Her Highness. Aristina looks pleased at Lady Rosalina, who changed her position so quickly. Blonde turns to the maid, saying that this is a very nice thing to do since she now has a dog. The redhead makes another dog noise, deciding that if she's going to do something, she needs to do it carefully. The blonde clutches her head, not understanding what is happening to her friend. The princess puts a ball in her dog's mouth, which she successfully holds. Aristina praises the girl for this, saying that she can actually be quite cute. Rosalina understands that although nothing can be changed, she is ready to do a lot to survive. The blonde one tells the maid that he wants to make her a hunting dog. The redhead smirks because this behavior would suit her better than being cute. Rosalina is going to bring the trophy that her mistress wants, and when all the game is caught, Aristina will be the only target. The princess tells the dog that she wants to see her hunting skills, but first, she's going to play with her a little more. To this, the girl smiles awkwardly, ready to humiliate herself again in front of her mistress. At the same time, Tarkan is in Arugo's training ground. The man remembers what people said about his origins, and that Khymer will become the next crown prince. The black-haired man cuts a leaf flying past to drive away unnecessary thoughts. Although His Highness is not ashamed of his origin, the wedding with the Sylvan family is the king's intention to compensate for Tarkan's political weakness. The prince understands that the struggle for the throne is becoming more serious, and a battle cannot be avoided. Durant approaches the hero, informing him that all the wars have gathered, and asking him to go to the meeting room. When the men leave the parade ground, the statues, due to the past training, shatter into pieces. Tarkan sits down in his place, announcing that the meeting has begun. One of those present suggests starting with a report about the corpse of a monster found yesterday. The man says that they are being asked to reschedule the processing of the magical stones being mined in the east. There are also reports from the south about an increase in the number of monsters. The man proposes to carry out a large-scale cleanup before the onset of winter. Then, one day, the conversation at the meeting turns to the Princess of Sylvanus, and everyone begins to discuss what kind of person she is. However, such a prince quickly pacifies his subjects with one word. Tarkan addresses the very man who reported the found corpse of the monster, calling him Jacallan. The prince asks Jacallan if he found out why Aristina was isolated. The man says that earlier, before the fair-haired woman arrived, he made a report with information about her. However, His Highness then said that it was good kindling material and burned everything in the fireplace. Tarkan wonders if it was what Jacallan just told about. The man continues, saying that the prince threatened him that if he wastes time on insignificant things, he will be let in for firewood. Seeing such a reaction, the black-haired man understands that this could really happen. Out of resentment, Jacallan begins to cry even harder, throwing the paper with the report on monsters on the table. The prince asks not to delay news about the princess in the future, and to report to him immediately. All those gathered look at Tarkan in surprise, not believing that he changed the order. Jacallan begins to think that when the heroes met in life, Aristina began to like His Highness. The black-haired one clarifies that the fair-haired one is an important key, and he must know everything about her, since the war is not over yet. After this, the prince asks where General Mukali is now, to which he is told that he went on a tour of the Western Front line. Tarkan asks to inform him when the general returns to the palace. After some time, the black-haired man is going to give some other orders to his servants. Everyone gathered tenses as the prince paused for a long time. The men decide that they will accept any order from His Highness and will go through fire and water to carry it out. Tarkan asks to contact a chef who is well-versed in making cakes. Everyone answers in unison that they will immediately fulfill the request. However, after that, everyone realizes what the black-haired man just said. The next day, the main character wakes up to the chirping of birds feeding and notices that it is already day. The girl clutches the sheet, thinking that she hasn't slept for a long time, washed clean, in clean clothes, and on a comfortable bed. The princess hugs the pillow and rolls from one side to the other, enjoying the soft sheep's wool blanket. The blonde girl pokes the mattress like a child, noticing that it is very elastic. Aristina happily beats her legs, wrapped in a soft blanket. However, the heroine stops doing this when she notices a guest in her bedroom. Tarkin looks at the girl, asking her if she is having fun. The princess asks the man what he is doing here. The black-haired man replies that he, as a husband, does not need a reason to come to his wife's bedroom. Aristina says that they are not married yet, to which the prince complains that after the wedding, he will be able to come whenever he wants. The blonde awkwardly says that she just didn't expect her husband to have free time. Tarkin freezes in place after these words, since this is the first time in his life he has heard such a thing. Tina scolds the man for not waking her up, since he definitely has something to do. When the black-haired man came to the girl, he first waited outside. However, the maid informed him that the fair-haired one had not yet woken up. Then the prince decided to go to the training ground, where he trained the knights. Then I went to work and listened to the report on the work. Having done many things, the man again came to the bride's chambers, but by this time she was still sleeping. One of Her Highness's maids told Tarkin that the blonde had a habit of fooling around, which was a bit problematic. Therefore, the girl invited the black-haired man to have a cup of tea with them before his bride woke up. The prince remembered the faces of these maids who mocked their mistress yesterday. Tarkin thought that his path was being blocked precisely because at the moment the heroine was crying because of their insults. These thoughts forced the man to burst into the Sylvan's chambers. However, the black-haired man saw only the princess calmly sleeping. From these memories, the second prince becomes embarrassed and turns his head to the side. Blonde notices this and muses that this is a popular situation in movies. Aristina points her finger at her groom, asking him if she looked like an angel, and that's why he couldn't wake her up. The girl's words again throw the prince into a stupor. The heroine notices that the black-haired man quietly made his way to the curtain of her bed, and hiding behind tea, secretly looked at her. The man begins to sweat profusely, silently asking the princess to stop talking about it. Aristina awkwardly says that she respects people's different tastes, but asks not to exercise them on her. Tarkin vehemently denies everything, saying that he never had anything like this in his mind, but they don't believe him. To stop talking about this, Tarkin puts some wrapped papers on the table. The princess takes them, thinking that it is an envelope with documents, but the contents greatly surprise her.